we have to finish for the whole topic no within this week. Okay, mag-submit unlock na daw mi sa among mga grades. So atong humanon class this week ato ang lesson to start with. This is just a review on our end kay it's already quite some time na nahuman nato atong discussion relative to the topic elasticity of demand. So just a review, no? So type of elasticity of demand, we have learned that there are three types of it. We have price elasticity, income elasticity, and cross elasticity. As we learn price elasticity, we are able to use this one to identify the types of goods available in the market. We have elastic demand, inelastic demand, unitary elasticity of demand, perfectly elastic demand, and perfectly inelastic demand. As we also learned what income elasticity is all about, from that topic, we have learned that there are two types of goods under consumers' income. So we have normal goods and we have inferior goods. And if you are going to recall our last discussion, this is the first topic to be part of our midterm pa dito anak, no? Correct ba po, midterm?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Midterm.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
this is the first topic that is part of our midterm coverage. And we have discussed already this one about cross elasticity of demand will tell us what type of goods under prices of related commodities. So we have substitute goods and we have complementary goods. So everything was already mentioned no, in the previous discussions. Just a review, mga quick lang na mga slides para ma-recall na to ato ang last discussion. And after this evening, akong i-upload ang inyong activity sa cross elasticity na wala pa jud nako na-upload. So karong gabi akong i-upload para ma-refresh ang ato ang knowledge para part siya sa ato ang midterm exam tomorrow, no? Para naatay refreshment of learning. So this is part of complementary goods and naatay computation, and then it is concluded na sa gali to this one no computation. Okay. So familiar na taani. Okay, so these are the types of elasticity of demand. So moving on to our continuation of chapter 2. Chapter 2 pa ta class, no, to conclude our midterm na coverage. This is the topic of consumer behavior. So this is the last part of chapter 2. And ang ato ang coverage sa midterm, ang cross elasticity o ang kaning topic nato urong hapuna. So this is about the consumer behavior. So consumer behavior is a field of study in economics which tries to explain the consumer's choices and our decisions in the context of limited income. As we kept on saying, this is part of economic facts. Now we have limited resources, and part of our limited resources is the income that we have at hand for spending purposes. So the limited income will always dictate the benefit and the satisfaction that we are going to experience from the consumption of goods or services. So when we look at the word utility in economics, it is the same thought of the word satisfaction. So the perceived benefit obtained from a product or services is called satisfaction, or in economics, we always come across the word utility. So pag once makabasa ta og utility, parihara na siya og pasabot sa satisfaction in a general or in a universal language, no? Satisfaction and utility are the same. So every time we consume goods, we always look forward kung unsay benefit na atong makuhaan na to experience at the end of the consumption the idea of satisfaction. So mauna ang goal no sa concept of consumer behavior. So in business relative to managerial economics, sa businesses ang understanding nato sa consumer is they are basically the one who will consume our goods and services. So they will be ang atoang sell or ang atoang pagbaligya, ang atoang products available for public or what we call supply no in a terminology sa economics. Ang atong supply will always be dictated by the demand, and the demand is being created by the consumer. So in the perspective of economics, what we should no for businesses, what we should do is for us to target the the individual's tastes and preferences along with the income. Dili na to pwedeng i-disregard or i-discount ang income because the income is the means for the consumers to purchase. So without income, there is no satisfaction at all. But technically, kung mingon kag taste and preferences and income is important because it bears the demand no kasi sila magud ang nag-create sa demand, the relationship between the price of the good or services and the quantity demanded in a given period of time will be the one to dictate the supply in the market. Again, ang price and the quantity demanded will be the one to shape the overall economy. Kay gikan ana dependent manggod ang demand, dependent ang supply sa price and the demand of the consumer. So as we look at the relationship of demand and the law of demand, if the price is high, consumer dislike to buy the goods at the higher price. So technically, quantity demanded will decrease. So if the quantity demanded will decrease, it has a significant or there is a ripple effect on the supply function. So kung wala kaayoy mo palit, there's no need for production. And if there is no production to be created, employment will be hampered. And if employment will be hampered, no income will be given. No, walay income na mag-circulate. If there's no income, there's no consumption at all. So that's what we call multiplier effect in economics. So that's why it will have a big bearing, and that is also leading on how we are going to shape the overall economy. So technically, kung miingon ta og consumer behavior in managerial economics, we have to understand the concept in a manner na ang consumer has to allocate the income. We have to bear in mind that as businesses, we have to consumers the available income of the consumers because that is the means on how they're going to purchase the goods and services available. And at the end of the day, they buy the goods and services because they have to experience utility or the idea of satisfaction. So, kung ikaw businesses, you have to consider your customers, your consumers along with their income because that income will dictate the ability and the capacity of the consumer to buy the available goods and services that you are selling to them. Okay? So, mupalit ang consumer because they believe that at the end of their consumption, they will feel the benefit out of it. And that's the idea of satisfaction. So, when we associate satisfaction no sa ato ang economics or managerial economic na study, tulo ka buok ang nagdetermine ana na theory. So there is the theory of consumer preference. Since we are associating the consumer with an income, ato pong tan-awon ang budget constraint. And the budget constraint will also dictate the maximum satisfaction that we are going to experience, provided that there is what we call consumer preference with limited income. So kanang 1 ug 2 mo na gi-combine para makuha nato ang utility maximization. So mauna siya ang tibuok perspective sa ato ang continuation sa midterm na coverage. So ato na siyang i-discuss karon one at a time para makuha nato ang concept sa consumer behavior. So to start with the consumer preference man atong giuna. To start with, ang consumer preference describe how and why consumers prefer one good over the other. No, daghan kaayo tag choices. So this is what we call consumer preferences. But the moment that at the point of comparison, the consumer will have to compare one good with another in order for him to make decision, in order for him to decide whether to buy or not to buy. So ang consumer preference is always based on the consumer's perspective na there is what we call market basket. Ang market basket is a collection of one or more commodities that we choose to buy in order to experience utility. So from the consumer's choices between the market basket containing the different goods, the moment you buy a certain product, that's already your decision to experience the idea of satisfaction from the given preferences. Okay? So imo man siyang gipili, so you expect something out of it. So from the purchase that you've done and from the consumption of the goods, at the end of your consumption, you will try to experience the idea of satisfaction. So maunay theories no naglies behind consumer preference. But of course, in the parlance of economics, there is what we call basic assumption. No, these are what we call suppositions na nagtuo na ang consumer preferences are complete. So meaning consumers preference or consumers can have an option to rank the commodity ngunay according to your priority. So you can have the most priority, the least priority, the most important, the least important, no? Ingon ana ato ang ranking of commodities. There is also an assumption na there is what we call transitive, meaning if the consumers prefer product A to B, and product B to C, therefore consumer must prefer product A to C. So that means if the consumer prefers product A over B and B over C, so meaning si consumer prefers all. No, naa siya iyahang gigusto ang tanan. However, there will always be preferred more. So kung ang imuhang nagustuhan nimo tanan, however, naa jud kay pinaka gusto. And that is based on your consumer's ranking preference. Okay? So makita man na nato no, na experience man na nato na pag moadto ta sa ato sa mall or whatever atong agtuan na department or section, ganahan kaayo katanan. However, na ay mag-control nimo. Number 1, imohang income. Number 2, your income will be dictated because of the price available of the product. So among all ganahan kay ka, pero nganong mo pili man jud ka ani. So consumers always prefer more of any good to less. No, ganahan kaayo ka. However, at the end of your purchase, you will always have to rank according to your importance, to your priority, and to your choice. Okay, so mo na basic assumption sa consumer's preference. So kung ato ang i-subject ang consumer preference into picture, Kay dili man jud nato ma-measure ang idea of preference, no? Kay subjective man ni. Dili man ka pwedeng maka-impose og balaod na kita tanan sa Econ 101 kailangan ganahan ta og Milo over coffee. Di man na pwede, no? Or moingon ko na kailangan mo inom lang jud ta og coffee than Milo. Di po na pwede natong butan because sa economics, consumers' preference is our consumers' freedom. Okay? No one cannot dictate on what product you are going to purchase. Walay balaod na nagprevail ana. We have the freedom to choose and we have the freedom to consume. So since dili man nato siya ma-measure in a picture out in a concrete manner, ato siyang i-represent o graphical solution. Kay pinaagi sa graph, pwede nato siyang ma-explain. Pwede nato siya ma-represent, no, in a manner sa iyahang basic assumption. Now, we have all the preferences, however, mo boils down ta into satisfaction. And satisfaction will always be dependent on the income and the price available in the market. So to represent the graphical idea of consumer preference, gitawag nato siya og indifference curve, no? We have the indifference curve. The indifference curve, it is a combination of market basket that consumer is indifferent to. Meaning, a consumer will be equally satisfied with either choices. So, kung mopili ka ni product A over product B over product C, so katutanan ang imuhang napilian, they have equally satisfaction. However, it will be based on your choice. So, mao ni gipasabot aning indifference curve. So, kung atong i-relate siya sa graphical solution, mao ni ang atong ma-expect, no, sa graphical solution na makita nato sa graph na whatever curve that lies in the graphical solution, they will have the same level of satisfaction. For example, no, kung tanaw nato, muanhi ta sa graph. Okay, this one. This is an example of indifference curve. So, katong gipasabot ato ganina, product A, product B, product C, product D, product E, parihara na ang imuhang ma-experience na satisfaction. However, kung mapili ka ni C, that's your choice. Kung mapili ka ni E, that's your choice. Muna gipasabot sa indifference curve. They have the same level of satisfaction. So a curve on a graph shows the combination of the quantities that the consumer regard as of equal value and having the same level of satisfaction. So katong si point A, B, C, D, and E, parihara to siya, neutral ang iyang idea ato. Because ang word na indifference in economics implies neutrality. So meaning pag indifference gali atong giistoryahan, tanan points didto is equally noted na the same ang iyang satisfaction na mahatag. So kaning indifference curve, kung sa parlance sa economics, this is a device, no, this is a graphical device used to demonstrate consumers' preference and the limitation of a budget. Motong ang first slide kaganina, we have consumer preference, budget constraint, and utility maximization. Kay again, the three boils down to the last, utility maximization. Okay? So ato ang ila-ilahon pag-ayo ang indifference curve. So ang indifference curve daw is an analysis that is based on the consumer's preference. And ang imuhang choice, believe that there is what we call satisfaction. So ang satisfaction cannot quantitatively measure in monetary terms. Munang gipangitaan siya sa economics na concept og unsaon pag-measure. Munang naay theory of indifference curve, because this approach will assign an order to consumers' preferences rather than measuring in terms of money. So ang ato ang lesson sa indifference curve, it does not talk about money, but it has something to do with the preference of the consumer. So this is an example of a basic, no, on how we make and how we apply consumers preference. So basically, there are two products available in the market. We have meat and we have fish. So naatay beef na meat, no? Okay, and then we have fish. From the two products available, there is an idea that you have to create or you have to buy 6 kilos with a combination of the market basket, which is fish, which is meat and fish. Okay? So 6 kilos ang atong abton. Unsaon nato siya pag-combine sa meat and fish equivalent to 6 kilos. So makakam up ta og 5 possible combinations. So we have combination A. Pwede 5 ka kilo na meat and 1 kilo of fish. Or you can have combination B. 4 kilos of meat or 2 kilos of fish. Or combination C. 3 kilos of meat, 3 kilos of fish. Combination D. 2 kilos of meat or 4 kilos of fish. And possible last combination E. Combination of 1 kilo of meat and 5 kilos of fish. So kung imo nang i-add up ang combination A, you will have 6 kilos. Combination B, you have 6 kilos. Up to E, 6 kilos. However, ang allocation nimo sa meat and fish will matter on your preference. So kung ato siyang i-translate og table, this is what we call indifference schedule, you can have here the combination as the first column, the second column is your meat, and the third column is your fish. So kung maingon kag combination A, 5 meat, 1 fish, parihara na siya og satisfaction na imuhang ma-experience kung pilion nimo sa letter D. 2 kilos of meat and 4 kilos of fish. Okay? So the bottom line here is your preference. Asa man sa lima ang imong gusto. So kung if you love to eat meat, you surely choose A and B. No, kung ganahan kag meat over fish. Kung gusto kag equally distributed imuhang preference, pwede ka mo pili ni C. Isa lang, dili siya pwedeng tanan, no? Kay isa ra man ka combination atong ma-create out of our income. So it's either A or B or C or D or E. So kung meat lover ka, mupili ka between either A or B. So kung ganahan yun kag meat halos, then you will have A. Pero kung ganahan kag medyo na ay distribution sa fish, you prefer B. Kung gusto kag patas ang imong distribution, you will choose C. Kung ganahan ka og fish than meat, you choose E. No? So, either of the point A, B, C, D, and E, walay argument na mahitabo because that is your choice. That is where you can experience the idea of satisfaction. Okay, so kung ako personally, if I am going to choose between among the combinations A, B, C, D, and E, I go for combination A because I love to eat meat than fish. Klaro? Ikaw, Queenie, which among combinations you like? Queenie,
Letter
if
C
you
po,
want
ma'am.
equally distributed meat and fish. O how about
Yes po.
Faiza?
Letter A po,
Letter
ma'am.
A, so it's meat over fish.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How about you, Norain?
Letter E po.
So you prefer fish than meat.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So kana atong mga choices, walay sayop ana. But that is where we can experience satisfaction. You get the point? No? Maunay indifference curve. So kung unsay pilion nato na combination, walay magtiglalis ana, walay argument, walay discussion, because that is our preference. And no one can argue and can refute on that. Because that is where we think that we can experience the satisfaction. They have the same level of satisfaction, but it's a matter of your preference. Okay? So kung ato siyang i-translate o graphical solution, this is how it looks like. So it is actually descending. If you look at the the meat, no, it's in the y-axis. Your fish is in your x-axis. Point A combination, you love more meat than fish. And that goes to point E, you love fish than meat. Okay, so if you try to look at the graphical solution, it's actually a substitution effect na akay i-give up for you to have the other good. Okay, so it's a downward sloping because it has a substitution effect. And this is the picture of the graphical solution of an indifference curve. Okay? From the indifference schedule, ato siyang gitranslate o graph. And that's what we call indifference curve. So what's the graphical implication? From the table, from the graph, therefore, every point on an indifference curve indicates a combination of two products which provides the same level of consumer satisfaction. So, lahi-lahi man taog choice. Motong lahi-lahi ato ang decision. Okay. So, moving on, if we have another set of example on the indifference curve na theory, we have in the person of Peter, Peter has 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. So this time, we will try to assess kung unsay preference ti Peter. This could be the possible combinations that Peter will have to decide among the market basket of food and clothing. So, if we ask Peter, how many units of clothing are you willing to give up in exchange for your additional unit of food so that his level of satisfaction remains unchanged? So this time, gatagan na to og decision si Peter. And this is different from example number 1. Kasi number 1, ato mo siyang gihatagan og exact combination with exact kilos, no? Unom ka kilo tanan. But this time, it depends. Wala siya accurate, wala siya exact kung pila ang iyahang total both combination, but it's up to the decision of Peter kung pila ang iyahang i-give up just to increase the unit of food. So, iyang i-give up ang clothing para mo increase ang iyang units of food. So, looking at the combination A, we have 12 units of clothing, 1 unit of food. So Peter decides to give up para makuha niya ang combination B, 6 units of clothing. So 12 minus 6, nahimo na lang 6 para mo increase og 1 unit iyahang food. So kung tan-aw na to, no, to continue the combination, ibalhin na to siya sa indifference schedule. So this is the indifference schedule. Ato siyang gamitan og indifference curve. Okay? However, this one. Okay. However, when you look at the combination of the goods, dili na siya accurate as to 12 and 12 in total, no? Because the theory speaks here the substitution effect. To increase the food, you have to give up your clothing. So as you look at that indifference schedule, nag-decrease ang iyahang clothing para mo increase ang iyahang food. So therefore, every point on an indifference curve indicates a combination of two products, food and clothing, which provides the same level of consumer satisfaction. So for Peter, he can have an option C, no? Na para mo increase iyahang food to 3, ma-decrease ang iyahang clothing. But same level of satisfaction. Or pwede po niya pilion ang letter B. I-decrease yun niya iyang clothing to 6 para ma-increase ang iyahang food into 2. But if you look at the characteristics or the behavior of the table, as you increase your food, your clothing decreases. This is because of the law na gi-introduce sa economics. And this is what we call marginal rate of substitution. So as you try to substitute the other product, ang isa mo decrease, ang isa mo increase. Okay? So mo ni gipasabot niya. All right. Muna gipasabot siyang table. But we will discuss the marginal rate substitution relative to this as we continue our lesson. Ato lang sa siyang i-touch gamay, pero ang discussion na adri sa ulahi. Okay? Mauna ang characteristic sa table sa indifferent schedule sa Peter na example. So if we know that a consumer is indifferent among the combinations lying on the same indifference curve. So meaning to say, if the consumer's preference is to be considered, maglahi-lahi ato ang gusto. No? Each of the consumers will have the different preference. And again, that is accepted because that's part of our economic freedom. It's either to choose one good over the other. In the concept of indifference curve, there are points that can be seen along the indifference curve na apoy points that lying outside or lying inside the indifference curve. Okay? So what does it mean? In the real sense, kung maingon ka og points that is lying outside the indifference curve, na siya sa gawas no sa indifference curve, point E na representation. Point E is more preferred because the higher the points on your right, it will have a greater satisfaction. Okay? But, na siya'y but if the points that is lying on outside the indifference curve, kung ato ang i-create ang combination sa budget constraint, these are points that is beyond our income. Though taas ato ang ma-experience na satisfaction, pero dili man nato siya ma-afford. Okay, maunang usahay mag-outlier siya sa ato ang graph. Though existing, but it's not doable because of the limited income and the price of the goods available in the market. So kaning mga point combination that is lying northeast of an indifference curve is preferred to any market that lies on the indifference curve because it gives a higher satisfaction. Higher satisfaction. But kung atong i-combine ang budget constraint, this also reflect na though taas ato ang satisfaction na makuha, pero dili siya attainable. Okay? Di man nato siya ma-afford. On the second part, those points that is lying inside the indifference curve, these are less preferred, no? Because it will have a lesser satisfaction. You have the capacity to buy, but you are not using your capacity to the fullest. Maybe naakay reasons at all. So that's why naay mga points na mo gawas na ay mga points inside the indifference curve. And this, ang miyang meaning ani, these are less preferred because it has a lower satisfaction na mahatag. So that means, tanan points na asa below sa indifference curve, these are goods or combinations of goods with lesser satisfaction. Those points lying above the indifference curve, these are points that will give us greater satisfaction. However, if we are going to link it with our income, these are points that are unattainable because we have limited income and the price should be considered when you buy the goods and services. Okay, so makita na to ang realidad, no? So naatay mga gusto kay maghatag sa ato og higher satisfaction pero dili na to ma-afford. Naay mga product na atong mapalit sometimes na dili kay nato gusto kay naatay rason kay kinahanglan pa nato gamitan ang ato ang extra na money for another purpose mo nang letter F. Pero if you're using your money to the fullest, combining two goods, and then you want to experience satisfaction, that's in the indifference curve. So it's either point D, C, B, and A. Okay. So that's what we call indifference curve na slope. It's a downward to the right because of the assumption that more is preferred to less. So meaning, kung mas ganahan gyud ka, no, you really prefer to have more, which you can experience greater satisfaction than less because of the lesser satisfaction that you can get. So that means, to be safe with our decision, all the points lying, this one, all the points lying in the indifference curve is the possible combinations where we can experience the idea of satisfaction, considering our income and the price available in the market. So all the points that had more of both goods would be indifferent to a basket with less or both goods. So if the indifference curve slopes upward, kung pataas siya, that's another story to tell, no? It's the violation of the assumption. O sa tong assumption, one, the preference is transitive. Second, we have the limited income. That's why we end up with preference idea. No, these are the possible uh, na mga reasons to defy the idea of indifference curve na theory. Okay? So for us to look at in a broader idea in the concept of buying more goods in the market, kay dili lang man pud isa, no, ka product atong ginapalit. It's a combination of two or more as long as we can afford. So naatay gitawag na indifference map. To describe the preferences for all the combination of goods or services, we have a set of indifference curve called indifference map. So the indifference map is a set of indifference curves. So meaning, combination siya sa available na mga indifference curve. No, we can see in a graph more than one indifference curve because it will always depict the complete picture of a consumer's preference. So, dili lang siya typical na isa. But once we buy goods and services, we actually creating a different indifference curve. And that is the composition of indifference map. So, each indifference curve in the map shows the market basket among which the consumer is indifferent. So this is the picture of indifference map. So you have indifference curve 1, that's IC1. We have indifference curve 2, and we have indifference curve 3. So in one graphical solution, you have 3 indifference curve, and what you are showing is called indifference map. Okay, what does the indifference map tells us? Okay, so this one. Pamantaan ni magsugod. Sige. Here. So from the indifference map, you can see there ang sa indifference curve 2, kung atong base, no? Kung mag-compare ta, ang atong base is indifference curve 2. If we are going to use indifference curve 2, the indifference curve 2, naa siya'y shifting na laing indifference curve. And that is labeled as indifference curve 3. So, si indifference curve 3 provides a greater satisfaction because it lies above the indifference curve 2. So, if ang indifference curve gali naa sa right side, lying above each of the indifference, ang iyang implication ana, they yield a greater satisfaction. So, meaning, between si IC2 man ato ang reference. So, si IC3 has a greater satisfaction than IC2. Mo na iyahang comparison. Kung si IC2 mo shift to IC1. Okay? So, meaning si IC1, lesser ang iyang satisfaction na mahatag compared ni IC2. So, ingon ani lang atong ibutang sa tong huna-huna. Pag once na ay ihatag na situation si ma'am, na ang base niya is IC2 or IC1 or IC3, pag once mo shift gali ang indifference curve to the right, ang iyang implication, it yields greater satisfaction. Pero pag once muhatag si ma'am og indifference curve na base na mo shift gali siya to the left, it yields a lesser satisfaction. Muna nahitabo sa IC1. Okay? So kung atong hatagan og example. Okay, mubalik ta dinhi. Okay, IC3, IC1, IC2, IC3. Okay, if I will ask Ninya, your reference Ninya is IC3. What will be your implication sa IC2? Ninya.
Ma'am, sorry, kanalag kaayo ako ang internet.
If I will ask you, Faiza, IC3 imuhang reference, what will be your analysis on the graph, Faiza?
My analysis is that IC2 is lesser satisfaction than IC3.
Very good. How about, let me check the others. Okay, Eliza, how about IC1, Eliza? Shift to IC3. Adaya, are you with us? Okay, let me hear from Justin. Naunsa naman mo din ha? Sige, anyone? Are you still with me? Ato ra ba ning exam ugma? Okay, anyone from the group? If I will ask you, your reference is IC1 and it will shift to IC3, what does it mean? Sige na, anyone, para we can move. Would you
Greater
like to answer,
satisfaction, ma'am.
Nor?
Yes, ma'am. It
Sige.
indicates a greater satisfaction po.
Okay, very good. So, it is a greater satisfaction. So, IC3 yields a greater satisfaction than IC1. So, ingon ana lang ang analysis nato pohon ha sa indifference map. So, I will now move to another. Okay. Muna siya atong example kaganina. So, when we look at the indifference map with a combination of point A, B, and C, this means that market basket A is preferred to B because A has a greater satisfaction. Market B is preferred to C because B yields a greater satisfaction than C. Because C belongs to IC1 and IC1 is lower ang iyang indifference curve than the other indifference curve 2 and 3. And as we know, all indifference curve that is below will have the lesser satisfaction. So if we will be given a chance to choose, diri jud ta ni point A na sa indifference curve 3. Ang the least option to make is ang point C in the indifference curve 1 because it provides lesser satisfaction. So, most likely, ingon ana ang analysis sa exam no tomorrow. Okay. So, these are the properties of the indifference curve. An indifference curve slopes downward to the right. Okay. And then, looking at the graph, downward sloping to the right. Next, an indifference curve is always convex to the origin. Third, indifference curve never intersect each other. No, di jud mag-abot ang 1, 2, and 3 na indifference curve. So these are the last na property sa indifference curve na atong gigamit kaganina for analysis. A higher indifference curve indicates a higher level of satisfaction as compared to a lower indifference curve. So moto'y analysis na to kaganina that will support the fourth property of an indifference curve. And lastly, an indifference curve does not touch the x-axis because of the substitution effect. Okay? So the indifference curve are useful in the sense that they indicate the degree of substitution relative to the fifth property of one good for another. The ability to substitute one good for another is an important scope in the consumer behavior. So such concept is illustrated by the marginal rate of substitution. Moto ako ang gidiscuss kaganina kang Peter. So going back to Peter, mo ni ang gigamit niya to create the combinations using the marginal rate of substitution. In this concept, ang marginal rate of substitution is the idea that consumer is ready to give up one good in exchange of another. So Peter is willing to give up clothing just to increase the units of food. Moto iyang gibuhat kaganina. So in this marginal rate of substitution, na atay formula na atong gamiton para makompute na to ang distribution no sa ato ang combination of goods having the support of the marginal rate of substitution theory. So ang formula is equal to ang marginal rate of substitution x and y is equal to change of your x divide change of your y. So your change of your x is ang imuhang change of your x is the change in good x is the number of units a consumer is willing to give up. So, mo bitaw na iyang formula sa babaw, no? Na x o y, kay pwede man siya mag-interchange good class. So, ang imuha lang dumdumon, kung unsa imong ibutang sa x, kato na siyang number of, or ang good na iyahang willing i-give up. Dayon, ang y, nimo na access will always represent the goods that you are ang imuhang na-gain out of the giving up of units. So that's why kung na-observe nimo kaganina, ang X is naa sa clothing, ang Y is naa sa food. Because ang Y, by definition, these are the goods that consumers can gain by giving up. Ang X, these are the goods that consumer is willing to give up. Okay? So pag abot sa marginal rate of substitution, dili mo follow pareha sa example sa meat, no, na magbaylo-baylo. Pwede si fish sa X, pwede si meat sa Y, ana, no? Pero pag abot diri sa marginal rate of substitution, ang inyuhang indicator ani Kung asa to na good ang iyahang gi-give up, mao toy X. Kung asa to na good ang nag-gain, mao to ang imuhang Y para di ka mabali sa imong graphical solution. Okay, so that is why here, if we go back to the Peter's example, the market basket A, B, C, D, we have food 1, 2, 3, 4 because that additional unit of food na nag-increase is due to the number of units that Peter is willing to give up from the clothing, no, from clothing. So, para makuha na to ang marginal rate of substitution, mag-extend ta og another column, i-label na to siya og MRS. Meaning, we are going to show here the rate at which Peter is ready to give up one good in exchange for another good. So atong tan-awon kung pila ang willingness ni Peter na i-give up sa clothing just to increase one unit of his food. Above, no, ang iyaha is above the grounding of the idea na whatever point combination or market basket na atong ma-create, they will have the same level of satisfaction. So if we are going to compute the MRS, so this is the formula. MRS for market basket A, it's just a dash because there is no prior activity done, no? Nagsugod man ta sa combination A. Provided na si Peter na ay 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. But as Peter decide to give up clothing from 6, mo increase ang iyahang food. So tan-aw nato ang iyahang willingness na i-give up para makita nato ang additional units of food na iyang mag-gain. So using the formula, change of your X, we have 12. Sa babaw ta mag-una, para dili negative ang result. 12 minus 6 divide 2 minus 1. Okay, kay ang 12 man ang atong gikwaan, ang willing, ang first unit na willing na i-give up ni Peter. Okay? And then mag-una ta sa 2, kay mao man na siya ang nag-gain ni Peter upon giving up clothing. So lahi ang iyang direction. Og masayop mo ani marong ang table. So 12 minus 6 minus 2 over 2 minus 1. So we have 12 minus 6 is 6, divide 1. Ang matakuha og 1, 2 minus 1. So that means for the market basket B, we have the marginal rate of substitution that is equal to 6. For market basket C, so we have 6 minus 4, divide 3 minus 2. So we have 2 divide 1, that will give us 2. For market basket D, we have 4 minus 3, and that is equal to 1. And we have 4 minus 3 sa food, that will also give us 1. So 1 divide 1 is 1. So from the idea of marginal rate of substitution, as Peter is willing to give up clothing, ang iyahang food is gaining. So iyang clothing ga decrease, ang iyahang food is gaining. And we use the MRS, the marginal rate substitution formula, to see kung pila ka units ang gi-give up ni Peter just to increase the units of food. Okay, so having that said, this is the graphical solution of Peter. As Peter accumulates more units of food, look at your y-axis, food, because food is the value, ang y is the value that is gained, no, from the giving up. And your x-axis is clothing, because as described, your x-axis, your change of your x is defined as the commodity that is willing to give up. Okay? So with that, Peter accumulates more units of food. The MRS starts falling. meaning he is prepared to give up fewer units of clothing for food. So Peter is willing to give up clothing just to earn or just to gain units of food. So muna yung implication. Therefore, pag abot sa exam ani, kanang gi-highlight na ko og red, mauna siya ang mag-change. Therefore, marginal rate of substitution of unsa to atong X, clothing for food is the amount of clothing whose loss can be compensated by a unit gain of food, keeping the satisfaction the same. So, muna atong gipasabot here, no? So, generic ang X ug Y, kay magdepende man siya sa problem na ihatag sa exam tomorrow. Okay? So, from the graphical solution and from the discussions, iyahang implication, so these are the takeaway. Indifference curve are convex. As more of one good is consumed, consumer would prefer to give up fewer units of second good to get additional units of the first one. So the MRS decreases as we move down the indifference curve. Nang downward, ang first property sa indifference curve is downward sloping to the origin. And in the other the explanation no, of the consumer sa indifference curve, consumers generally prefer to balance a market basket, which you will experience not so greater satisfaction because of your income and not so lesser satisfaction because it will also suffer your satisfaction. So that's why indifference curve will give us the idea at most preferred combination where you can experience the real idea of satisfaction. So consumer preference theory in consumer behavior does not require assigning a numerical value to the level of satisfaction, but it examines which combination of goods the consumer would prefer just as much. Matong ipasabot ka ganina. Although ranking of the market basket is good, but sometimes numerical value is useful because again, there is no such accurate measure of satisfaction. Unang gibuhat sa economics, create sila og device, and that is what we call indifference curve. Okay? So that is the concept of consumer behavior. Ang next nato, i-combine nato ang budget constraint and utility maximization. However, okay, this one. Mulaos ko diri class ha. Okay, kadjut lang ha. Okay, naabat ko. Okay, wait lang. Taas naman kaayo no kung atong ilahos. Unsa man class, taasa na kay mo sa coverage for the midterm? How do you find the topic? Is it too long for you to have the midterm? Okay. We will cut the discussion this afternoon. Ang atong discussion will end up with this. Kani lang, kani atong na-discuss karon. Okay, mao pa to yung mga slide na atong humanon. If you would like to continue, then we will continue. Ako lang itong ipakita sa inyo ha, para ma-evaluate ninyo ang length of your review. Shall we stop here or shall we continue? Sige, can you chat?
Ma'am.
Stop na, ma'am.
Stop. Stop. Agoy. Okay, sige. Stop. So meaning, the coverage of your midterm exam tomorrow is from the cross elasticity up to the last topic of your consumer behavior learning this afternoon. Okay, Rana?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay. So I'll see you tomorrow for your midterm exam. You please study the cross elasticity and the lesson that we had discussed a while ago. And that is about the a while. Dire. consumer behavior in the concept of consumer preference lang sa ta. Okay? Diri lang sa ta ha. So this evening, I will upload the activity for the cross elasticity para ma-refresh ang ato ang learning sa cross elasticity. I will also upload another activity for the lesson this afternoon para ma-review po ninyo ang ato ang preparatory siya for the midterm exam tomorrow. So ang atong midterm exam tomorrow will be okay ra ta ugma 4 o'clock.
Face to face, ma'am.
No, of course not. We will have online. Dili ko pwedeng mo cross sa schedule ninyo. All exams from midterm, semi, and finals mag-virtual rata class kay I know you are already in your provinces. I cannot go beyond your limit. Okay ra na?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
we'll have the virtual exam tomorrow. So I need your permit. Please post your permit sa stream so that I can check ahead of time this evening for preparation of your midterm exam tomorrow. 4 o'clock class ha. I'll see you 4 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.
So please study the topic from cross elasticity down to the consumer preference this afternoon. Do we have questions, clarifications on the lesson that was presented to the group about consumer preference? I guess none. Silence means no. None. What? Okay, so wala na. Unsa Faiza, you have concern?
Ay, wala na, ma'am.
Okay. So, I hope everything is clear on the discussion this afternoon. Kung wala na, then I guess we're good to go for this afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'll see you tomorrow for the midterm examination. Activities will be uploaded this evening for your advance. Put na siya na review preparatory for our exam tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. Then let's call it this afternoon. See you tomorrow. Upload ang permit palihog nak ha sa atong stream para I can check this evening. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the Google tomorrow. Virtual to tomorrow. I'll see you virtually tomorrow for your midterm exam. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Good night, ma'am.
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 Thank you.